She abruptly dismissed him. Yet after he left, the silence in her office felt heavier than before. Days turned into months. Without meaning to, Selene slowly became aware of Rowan's presence everywhere. She saw him carrying Ivy asleep on his shoulder after late evenings. She saw him patiently fixing broken office printers while executives ignored maintenance staff. She saw him skip lunch to afford better school supplies for his daughter. And she saw how Ivy adored him. One rainy afternoon the power temporarily failed throughout the building. Employees waited irritably in darkened hallways while backup systems rebooted. During the confusion, Selene unexpectedly encountered Ivy sitting near a window drawing pictures with crayons. The little girl recognized her immediately. Instead of fear, Ivy smiled brightly and offered Selene a crayon. Selene almost walked away. But something stopped her. Reluctantly, she sat beside the child for exactly 30 seconds, intending only politeness. Those 30 seconds changed everything. Ivy talked endlessly about stars, cartoons, and how her daddy sometimes danced badly while cooking pancakes. Selene listened quietly, uncomfortable yet strangely calm. Then Ivy asked a question no adult had ever dared ask. "Why do you always look sad?" The word struck like lightning. Selene felt breath catch painfully in her throat. Nobody had ever asked if she was sad. People called her intimidating, powerful, brilliant, cruel, but never sad. Before Selene could respond, Rowan arrived apologizing for Ivy bothering her. He looked embarrassed, but Selene surprised herself by saying the child was not bothering anyone. That night Selene stood alone in her penthouse staring at the city lights while Ivy's innocent question repeated endlessly in her mind. "Why do you always look sad?" Because sadness had become so permanent she no longer recognized it. Over time, tiny changes began appearing in Selene's life. She started eating lunch occasionally instead of. The rain began just before sunrise, falling in long silver streaks across the glass towers of downtown Seattle, turning the city cold and distant. At the top floor of the towering headquarters of Valence Dynamics, the employees moved through the marble halls with quiet fear, careful not to make mistakes, careful not to attract attention, careful not to cross the woman everyone called the Ice Queen. Her name was Selene Voss, and at 38 years old, she had become one of the youngest CEOs in the country. Ruthless in business. Untouchable in public. Emotionless in private. Men feared her in boardrooms because she destroyed them without hesitation, but what nobody knew was that Selene feared men far more than they feared her. She trusted no one. She let no one close. Behind the expensive suits, behind the cold eyes, behind the billion-dollar empire, there was a wounded little girl who had spent her entire life believing that love only existed long enough to betray you. And the man who would change everything entered her life carrying a lunchbox with cartoon dinosaurs on it and holding the tiny hand of a sleepy 5-year-old girl. Before this emotional journey begins, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries, if you believe kindness and second chances can still change lives. Your support helps bring more heart-touching stories like this to people around the world. Selene Voss had built her life like a fortress. Every wall had purpose. Every rule had meaning. Her company was known for impossible standards because she believed weakness invited destruction. Employees rarely smiled around her. Meetings became silent the moment she entered the room. She demanded perfection because imperfection reminded her of chaos, and chaos reminded her of childhood. Her father had once been charming, successful, respected. In public he looked like the perfect husband and father, but behind closed doors he carried anger like poison in his veins. Selene listened. By 25 she had graduated top of her class. By 30 she had created Valence Dynamics into a technology powerhouse. By 38 she was wealthier than most of the men who once underestimated her. Yet every night she returned to an empty penthouse where silence echoed louder than success. She never married. Never dated seriously. Never trusted. And definitely never allowed fathers with children anywhere near her carefully controlled world. Which was why everyone was shocked when Rowan Hale appeared in the building. He arrived on a bright Monday morning carrying coffee stains on his shirt and exhaustion in his eyes. Unlike the polished executives who filled the office, Rowan looked ordinary. Warm brown hair slightly messy. Worn shoes. A face marked not by arrogance but by sleepless nights. Beside him walked his daughter, Ivy, wearing a yellow raincoat and clutching a stuffed rabbit missing one button eye. The receptionist looked panicked because children were not allowed in the building. Rowan apologized immediately. His babysitter had cancelled unexpectedly. His daughter's school was closed for maintenance. He had no family nearby and couldn't afford to miss his first day because he desperately needed the job. At the exact moment the receptionist tried to explain company policy, the elevator doors opened. Selene Voss stepped out. The lobby froze instantly. Employees lowered their heads. Conversations died. Fear spread through the air like smoke. Selene's icy gaze landed first on Rowan. Then on the little girl holding his hand. Then on the stuffed rabbit. Her expression hardened immediately. The receptionist stammered nervously, explaining the situation before Selene could ask. Rowan prepared himself to be fired before even starting. He stood taller, protective instinct rising as Ivy hid partially behind his leg. But before Selene could respond, Ivy looked up innocently and asked if the tall lady owned the shiny building. The question caught everyone off guard. Selene stared down at the child. Nobody spoke to her casually. Adults trembled around her. Yet this little girl looked at her with complete sincerity, completely unaware of power, status, or fear. For a brief second, something unfamiliar flickered in Selene's chest. Then it vanished. She coldly instructed human resources to place Rowan in the lower analytics department temporarily and added that the child must remain quiet and out of sight. She walked away without another word. But for reasons she could not explain, Selene thought about that little girl for the rest of the day. Rowan Hale had not planned for life to become this difficult. 5 years earlier he had been a high school art teacher living an ordinary happy life with his wife Clara. They were not wealthy, but they were deeply in love. When Ivy was born, Rowan believed his future was complete. Then Clara was diagnosed with an aggressive heart condition shortly after Ivy's first birthday. Medical bills swallowed their savings. Rowan worked multiple jobs while caring for both his wife and daughter. He stayed awake nights researching treatments and spent mornings making breakfast while pretending everything would be okay. But hope eventually lost. Clara died holding Rowan's hand in a hospital room flooded with afternoon sunlight. After that, survival became routine. Rowan sold nearly everything they owned. He left teaching for better-paying data work despite having little experience. He spent years moving between temporary jobs, struggling to raise Ivy alone. Every decision revolved around her safety, her happiness, her future. Unlike many men Selene had known, Rowan never blamed the world for his pain. He simply kept going. And somehow, despite exhaustion, he remained kind. Over the following weeks, Rowan became quietly popular among coworkers. He helped interns without complaint. Stayed late when others needed support. Brought homemade muffins occasionally because Ivy. Selene noticed. She noticed because kindness inside her company felt suspicious. One afternoon she overheard employees laughing in the cafeteria around Rowan while he showed them childish drawings Ivy had made of Daddy's giant office castle. Selene watched from the second-floor balcony unseen, irritation tightening her jaw. Why was he smiling so much despite having so little? Why did people seem calmer around him? And why did it bother her? The answer frightened her more than she realized. Weeks later, during a major presentation with investors, disaster struck. A software failure erased critical projections moments before Selene entered the conference room. Senior executives panicked. Millions were at risk. Everyone feared her reaction. While technicians scrambled uselessly, Rowan quietly stepped forward and restored the damaged files from backup servers he had noticed malfunctioning earlier that morning. The crisis ended within minutes. The investors applauded the recovery. Selene said nothing during the meeting. But later that evening she called Rowan into her office. Her office overlooked the entire city. Cold gray walls. Minimal decoration. No family photographs. No warmth. Rowan stood respectfully while Selene reviewed his file in silence. She finally asked why someone with an art education background understood systems analytics so well. Rowan explained that life had forced him to learn quickly after his wife became sick. He learned coding through online courses during nights at hospital bedsides because medical debt left him desperate for better opportunities. He said it simply. No self-pity. No attempt to impress. Selene unexpectedly asked about his daughter. Rowan smiled softly in a way that transformed his tired face completely. He described Ivy's obsession with painting clouds and how she believed every stray cat secretly belonged to the moon. Selene found herself listening longer than intended. Then Rowan made a mistake. He thanked her for giving him